Good afternoon and welcome back to our news bulletin. I'm Staria Strzemska. Ukrainian and Russian delegations concluded their talks in Istanbul after less than 2 hours of discussion. Unfortunately, they were unable to reach an agreement for a comprehensive 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine. Our correspondent Alex Carrier is in Istanbul and has more. Hi Alex, so can you sum up for us what has been achieved and where peace negotiations go from here?
Well, certainly there have been some minor elements of progress. We heard Rustem Umerov, the defense minister of Ukraine, who is also leading the Ukrainian delegation, talking about the fact there is a potential for a prisoner swap, quite a large-scale prisoner swap between both sides. 1,000 prisoners released on the Ukrainian side against 1,000 released on the Russian side, so incremental progress perhaps in that sense. Mr. Umerov also talking about the fact that they are working towards a potential meeting between Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Vladimir Putin, but giving no guarantees of a timeline or any level of certainty about whether or not that would happen. For those hoping a ceasefire could be agreed or at the very least approached today, that does not seem to have been the case. Ukrainian diplomatic sources saying that the demands put forward by the Russian side were simply unacceptable and did not refer back to anything that had been discussed before. We understand that one of those suggestions or demands from the Russian side was for all 4 of the Ukrainian regions that are part occupied by Russia to be handed over to the Russian Federation. So clearly things that the Ukrainians cannot begin to contend with. So the question now, of course, is what pressure might be applied on Russia to do more, to be more constructive in these talks? Well, of course, we heard from Prime Minister Tusk of Poland. He met with the German Chancellor, the French President, with Sir Keir Starmer of the UK, and, of course, with President Zelensky. They all spoke to President Trump. Let's have a listen to what Prime Minister Tusk had to say.
We met again after a few days in the same format. Together with President Zelensky, we spoke on the phone with President Trump to sum up the attempts at negotiations that began in Istanbul. The information was clear. The Russian side did not show goodwill. The Russian side did not intend to negotiate in the presence of the American side. The Russian side again set conditions that were absolutely unacceptable not only to Ukraine, but also to all of us.
So the question, of course, is whether or not that pressure from European partners of Ukraine will have an impact in the White House, will have an impact on Donald Trump, because at the moment he was asked if he had any issue with Vladimir Putin not coming to the peace talks here in Istanbul. He said, no, I understand. He would not come if I was not there. And President Trump said he would like to meet the Russian leader whenever it can be set up. So some incremental, small progress on that prisoner swap, but absolutely no path yet for a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine.
Alex Carrier reporting from Istanbul. Thank you. Following the largely limited success of the talks in Istanbul, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has called on his allies to increase the pressure on Vladimir Putin. Some are receptive to his calls, but only time will tell if they deliver. More from our correspondent Angela Skujins, who is in Albania.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy delivered an impassioned plea at the European Political Community Summit in Albania on Friday. He asked those 47 prime ministers, presidents and various heads of states to continue dialing up the pressure on Moscow, particularly as Russian President Vladimir Putin failed to show up to ceasefire talks in Turkey. Let's take a listen to what Zelenskyy had to say on Friday.
There needs to be a strong reaction, including sanctions against Russia's energy sector and banks. Pressure must continue to rise until real progress is made.
Now, you can really hear anger in that Ukrainian president's voice, but we also heard support coming from Friedrich Merz, Germany's new chancellor, as well as UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. They promised to do more to show up for that Ukrainian president. It comes off the back of those 2 leaders joining French President Emmanuel Macron and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in Ukraine, hammering out the details of that 30-day ceasefire proposal. But let's take a listen to what the leaders of both Germany and Britain had to say in regards to how they will continue to support Kyiv.
Ukraine is clearly the party of peace, and we all need to line up as allies to ensure that we get the ceasefire that is desperately needed and deliver sanctions if that is necessary.
We have to do more on that, on diplomatic efforts, but we have to be very clear on our military support for this country as well. There should be no doubt that we are willing to continue to give our support.
Speaking of support, we know the EU is one step closer to hitting Russia with another round of sanctions. This would be the 17th since that country's full-scale invasion in 2022. Now, this package aims to target vessels accused of participating in Russia's murky shadow fleet, as well as financial institutions in particular. They're operating in conjunction with those tariffs being established and hammered out in Washington. They're described as bone-crushing and aimed at targeting countries importing certain Russian goods, but we know that all of these need to happen in conjunction to dial up the pressure on the Kremlin to at least agree to a 30-day ceasefire proposal in the hopes of ending the overall bloodshed. Angela Skujins from Tirana for TVP World.
And we continue on the very same topic. The European Union is ready to increase sanctions against Russia to incentivize the Kremlin to negotiate a peace deal with Ukraine, said the President of the European Commission while attending European Political Community Summit in Albania.
And we are ready to do more to bring Putin to the negotiation table. Many of the speakers mentioned it. This war has to end. You said it, Georgia. You said it, Keir. Volodymyr has described with others the roller coaster of the last days. To be very clear again, we want peace. And so we are working on a next set of sanctions. Main elements of this package will be, for example, sanctions on Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, further listing of vessels in the shadow fleet and lower the oil price cap, and more sanctions on Russia's financial sector, because we want peace and it is time to seriously engage on that.
And now on a domestic note, the website of the Polish ruling party Civic Platform fell victim to a cyber attack on Friday, according to a senior party official. The news comes just hours before the election silence period, ahead of the first round of Poland's presidential elections that are taking place this Sunday. A senior member of the Civic Platform, Liberal Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski, is running against Karol Nawrocki, supported by the main opposition party Law and Justice and far-right Sławomir Mencen, among others. The attack has reportedly started at 9 a.m. As a result, the Civic Platform's main website and a page for campaign donations are disabled for the time being. The Civic Platform is working with the National Research Institute's cybersecurity team to restore functionality. NATO's Lighting Griffin 25 exercise is underway in Lithuania. As part of the exercise, Allied troops, including French, British, US, Italian and German soldiers, participated in a number of airborne and in-field maneuvers. More from our reporter Zuzanna Jurek, who is on the ground.
The Griffin Lighting 25 exercises are organized by NATO's Multinational Corps Northeast. These exercises aim to test out the operational speed, readiness as well as operability of NATO's allied forces in a simulated Article 5 environment. These exercises are multi-domain exercises which aim to test out the strength of capabilities in different scopes, including airborne, medical as well as land maneuvers. It is the latter set which we are experiencing here in Lithuania. These exercises are expected to comprise of approximately 16,000 soldiers from allied forces including Norway, Germany, the US, Britain, France, as well as Poland. These exercises simulate combat situations in order to test out the operational readiness of the allied forces, including combat scenarios. Now, the priorities of the multinational integration of the allied forces into cohesive units, fighting units specifically, is also being tested. Most importantly, however, these exercises aim to test out the operational readiness should an adversary attack occur on NATO's eastern flank. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
And that's a wrap for this news bulletin. Thank you for watching. The Bottom Line with Mary Cato coming up next.